Docherty inside shoots tamely, and England skipper Billy Wright starts Finney off. Finney to Brodis, but William...
He made things easier for the people around him. He was good with both feet. He was good in the air. He was brave. He was quick. And he played in every forward position. And for me, he'll always be the greatest I ever played with. And I think he was the greatest of his time. I think he, you know, every sort of decade or so throws up an exceptional player. And in that case, it was Tom.
I would think best to come nearest to him in our game. I've seen Maradona quite a lot. I've played against Puskas and I've seen Pelé. Pelé was exceptional, of course, as well. I doubt very much if any of those players could have endured our weather, our climate, playing week in, playing about 70 games a season for England and his country. I don't think those players, your Maradonas and Pelé, possibly would have done that.
Belyayev never had such an afternoon. When Lofthouse beat him, England had scored 5, Russia 0. By that goal...
He's a nice guy. He played for the team. Didn't matter if he scored, as long as somebody was scoring there, he was making them. Didn't matter, he'd play anywhere. That was Tom Finney.
Whatever John Barnes is worth, Tom's worth as much, or possibly more.
Finney played during a golden era of football when English teams dominated the field. The post-war years and the 50s were a time of great individual players performing to capacity crowds. At Wembley, there were gates of over 100,000, and here at Preston, there were regularly over 30,000 spectators for a Saturday game, and most of them had come to see Tom Finney.
Well, it seemed almost every time I saw Tommy play, but every time he got the ball, he just never lost it until he decided to part with it.
We used to stand in the paddock on the right-hand side where Finney would play, right in front of us. And my father never even asked about getting a stand ticket or anything. We always had to stand in the paddock where Tom Finney would play, so at least he would have 45 minutes where he'd be enraptured.
Tom Finney was born in Preston on the 5th of April 1922. He's lived here all his life. The house he was born in is just a few hundred yards away, over in that direction, in St Michael's Road. His school is in front of me, just off Deepdale Road. And on Deepdale Road itself, the famous Preston North End Football Club, a small, compact triangle containing the major influences on the young Tom Finney's life, his family, his school, and football. And from any point in this triangle, you can hear the roar of spectators at a North End home match. And it couldn't have failed to make an impression, and maybe even hinted at Tom's destiny. But the early years of his life were to be crossed with hardship and loss. Tom's mother, Margaret, died in 1926, and his father, Alf, struggled to bring up 6 children. At school, Tom's slight physique gave no indication whatsoever of his future prowess. He's pictured here with the school team before the finals of the 1936 English School Shield. At 4'9", he was considered too small to play other than as a reserve.
Brilliant. Well held. Have a look where the keeper is. Well down, Ian. Yes, Gil. Yes, Gil. Still a batting young man. Did you get a touch, Gil?
Well, I remember leaving school and applying for a trial with Preston North End and didn't hear anything. And it was virtually 12 months after that my father knew Bill Scott, who was then the trainer of Preston North End, and approached him, and they granted me a trial. And I was told that I would be playing in one of the sides. And when I went into the area where we were stripping to get ready for the game, there was a chap already with a number 10 on his back, and it was my reaction was, you know, that I'm playing a number 10, and he said, oh, be off. And I had to go back and speak to Mr. Scott, who already guaranteed me a trial, and say that there was someone else going to play at number 10. He just came in and said, oh, it's all right, give the youngster, you know, his shirt. He said he'll only be on for 10 minutes, but I lasted longer than that. I played for the full 90 minutes. after the game, I was approached by the chairman of Preston North End, at least my father was, to say, see if I could join the ground staff as an apprentice professional. And my father told me this, of course, I was over the moon, and he said, oh, wait a minute, you know, I said, I'm not very keen on this idea. And I said, why? You know, well, that's what I always wanted to be. And he said, yes, but you've started your apprenticeship now as a plumber, and what's going to happen if you don't make the grade at 17 or 18? You'll have lost your, you know, your apprenticeship, and you'll have nothing to fall back on. There's plenty of time for you to play football. You're only a young lad of 15, and but I was so upset about the thing that he said, well, you go and ask your boss and your workmates, and if they feel the same way as you do, I'll let you sign. And of course, they sided with my father, and that was why I just was allowed to sign as an amateur with Preston North End, and didn't, of course, get to do what I wanted to do until, of course, later years.
And it was not until 1940 that he turned professional. Tom was paid 10 shillings per game in those days, and perhaps it was just as well that he had his other career to fall back on. But by now, the Preston plumber was on his way up a much higher ladder. But the war was getting closer. Shortly after Finney's first game against Liverpool, the city was hit by a big air raid. Football continued, however, and in a remarkable double, Preston won both the wartime league and the cup final. In 1942, Finney was called up for active service and in December sailed for Egypt to join the 8th Army. But things didn't turn out quite as he expected.
My experience, of course, of the army was the fact that for the first 2 years I was out there in Egypt, I was playing football and other sorts of sports during the whole of the 12 months, really, virtually 3 or 4 times a week. So I was escaping, really, what most of the other lads were doing, which was square bashing and army training. But it was really entertaining troops and whatnot, and they thought that was a good service that we were contributing to the forces out there.
With the invasion of Italy, Finney was pulled in as a tank driver mechanic and saw active service.
I well remember driving the tank on many occasions, having quite a rough time with it, and we did lose, of course, 1 or 2 tanks that were knocked out in the battle, and lost, of course, a few of my pals that I'd palled up with during the army.
Tom Finney was married to Elsie in 1945. Their courtship had been interrupted by the war, but the marriage has endured happily with 2 children, Barbara and Brian, soon to swell the household. In 1946, Tom Finney returned to the austerity of post-war England and his old club Preston. Picked as a reserve for the England team for their first game after the war, it was only when Stanley Matthews was injured that he got his chance to play. In his first 2 internationals, Finney scored a goal a game. It was an impressive debut, and he was soon being compared to the illustrious England and Blackpool winger.
Skipper Billy Hughes of Birmingham leads the Welsh side out at Main Road, Manchester. England followed, and while we were waiting for the kick-off, here's a few notes on the game. Each side had a star missing. Tom Finney of Preston took Stanley Matthews' place, and for Wales, Ivor Powell was inside left instead of Bryn Jones. That started the argument, and the critics haven't finished with it yet. The second half began it. Here's Finney coming up now. He's number 7. Critics say he was just a decoy and not in Matthews' class. I don't agree. Finney's work, as the Pathy cameras show it, was fast, clever, and as good as it could have been against a strong Welsh defence. Here's a true Matthews touch, with Welshman Ivor Powell holding the dummy. Throughout this half, Tom Finney was in the picture and stayed there.
Throughout their playing careers, the media made much of the alleged rivalry between Matthews and Finney. In fact, the 2 men shared a mutual respect and close friendship. Stoke City Football Ground was the venue for a unique reunion of these 2 legendary footballers.
Great friends. I mean, it was on the press who took this up. As a matter of fact, that when we played international matches together, Tommy would ring me from Preston to Blackpool, or I'd ring him and say, well, I'll catch the train from Blackpool, and Tommy would be waiting for me at Preston, and off we went. And we shared the rooms together. And after the matches, whatever, we travelled back. He went to Preston, I went to Blackpool. Tommy had 2 great feet. He was deceiving. You wouldn't think he was so fast, but he had that sort of quickness off the mark, and he would glide through a player just like that. And the great play was he had a change of pace, which made him a great player.
Although it's difficult to draw comparisons between then and now, how do you think Tom would have fared if he'd been playing today?
He would have been brilliant, no doubt about it, because today, wherever you go, wingers must come in the game. And I feel sure that if Tommy was playing on the left or on the right, that's where the danger comes from. That's where the goalkeepers don't like, send us across or whatever. He would have been really outstanding. When I went to live in Malta, they said that I took a comb out of my pocket during the game and did that.
Did
well,
they?
Well, it must have happened. You know where the hot it was.
It was
I must have done that.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be carrying a comb out.
No, that's what they thought,
Yeah.
because, I'd like to play today if I could.
Any particular reason?
Because I love the game.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
In Portugal, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right, I remember saying that.
Yeah.
Went in the back of the net a size 4 and came out a size 5. Yeah, I remember that stuff.
No, didn't he go in size 5 and came back with a size 4?
Well, I thought it was the smaller one we started with, and we were winning 4-0 after about 20 minutes. They changed it to ours then, and went on and beat them 10.
Remember that, yeah. 10-9. 10-1.
10-0.
1.
10-0, Stan.
Was it?
10-0.
It's funny, so Hardwick
10-0.
about 2 months ago, and he's talking about it. I said 10, and he says, no, it was 10-1.
No, it wasn't. It was 10-0. It's down to you looking at the records anyway.
Okay.
Without Mortensen, number 8, and his clubmate Stan Matthews, an England team is unthinkable. Their work leads up to England's goal. Milburn is tripped in the penalty area, and the ball rolls to Finney, who slams it in for the goal of the match.
Playing together for the first time, Finney and Matthews helped the England team to win 2 memorable post-war internationals, a 10-0 win over Portugal and a 4-0 victory over Italy in 1948. The only mystery is why the England selectors took so long to decide to play the 2 men together.
At Cardiff's Ninian Park, a white-shirted England 11 trounced a Welsh team by 3-0. Result of the match was decided in the opening few minutes. Brightest spot in a star attack was nimble-footed Stanley Matthews, number 7. A cross pass to the other wing, and outside left Tom Finney makes the score 1-0.
They were both great players, really, in their own right, and they were slightly different. Tom he was, let's always say, more of a team man, and he would sort of, well, he'd get stuck in a little bit more than Stan, but Stan had that little bit of finesse probably that Tom didn't have, you know. But I mean, if you want me to sort of say who was the best player, which I'm going to say Tom, but marginally.
Now England are on the move. The ball goes to Tom Finney. He draws the defence and passes to Medley. The Spurs winger sends over a beauty. Bailey gets his head to it, and England are level. Finney lays on goal number 2.
By now, Finney was the rising star of English football.
Tom Finney, taking over Stan Matthews' mantle, delights the crowd with his bag of tricks. It's from his centre that Pearson scores number 9.
By 1952, Finney was 30 years old and in his prime. His spectacular ability had made him the most valuable footballer anywhere in the world. He was a wanted man. And just how much is illustrated by the staggering offer made to him by Palermo that same year.
This prince turned up. I was sharing a room with Tom at the time, and he made Tom this fabulous offer, you know, £10,000 signing on fee, a new Mercedes, a villa, and free passage for his wife and kids whenever they wanted to go across. And when you think that in those days we were probably on about 18 or 20 pounds a week, and this was a sort of £10,000 signing on fee and fabulous wages. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, if Tom could have gone, I would think he would have gone. But clubs in those days, they held all the power. You're only signed for 1 season, and if they wanted you at the end of that season for the following season, there's no way you could go anywhere else without going non-league. All the power was with the clubs, and they were ruled by autocratic chairmen in most cases.
I wouldn't change it. I would obviously have liked to have been playing today, but I had tremendous enjoyment out of the game all the time I played, and I think money was secondary anyway in those days because there just wasn't the money in the game.
For his services to Preston North End, Finney was never paid more than £20 per week, dropping to £14 during the summer. This was the maximum wage paid to all league players, and for much of his career, Finney was paid less.
The clubs then imposed their own wage structure on the players. They paid what they could actually afford. And I remember vividly, Tom was on 14 in the playing season and 14 in the summer, which was a close season. And I was on 10 at the time in the playing season and 6 in the close season. And I got my 10th cap for Scotland at Wembley on Saturday. Did very well, I thought, without being big-headed. I went to see the manager, Billy Scott, on the Monday. He was a very, very nice fella. And I said, Mr. Scott, I says, I've got my 10th cap for my country. Did quite well. From now on, I would like, please, the same money as Finney, £14 all the year round. He said, but you're not as good a player as Finney. I said, well, I am in the summer.
It's possible to imagine it was an easier game then. Somehow the baggy shorts and muddy leather ball seemed to rule out the speed and sharpness of professional football today. But the game was played just as hard then as now.
The most serious being sustained by Swift from a charge by Little. Swift carried on in spite of 2 cracked ribs. Here's another view of the collision.
Just been studying looking around this ground now. We played here with Bolton Wanderers and Preston. It's been marvellous, 30,000 here. All mixed together, perhaps a couple of policemen walking around ground talking about holidays, no fighting. Where have we gone wrong?
That's what it was. It was a game of sport and enjoyment, and I mean, it was a common knowledge then that players, I mean, I used to go on the bus every home game and travel with the spectators, and we would have a chat about the opposition who we were playing, and the same coming back. But I mean, the game has changed considerably financially, and of course I feel that it's for the better in some respects, in that the players are paid on ability.
Certainly, it has changed.
Spectators are also respectfully reminded that closed-circuit TV is in operation on the ground at all matches. Please remember that smoking is not allowed in the stands. Thank you.
Finally, Cox took a free kick and Lichman did the rest.
Finney's claim to greatness lies not just with his outstanding skill. For players and spectators alike, he embodied the finest sportsmanlike qualities. In many respects, Tom Finney could have been the model for Roy of the Rovers, the football comic hero of the 50s. During his entire career, he was never once booked. This in spite of being fouled, it's been calculated, once every 4.5 minutes. He never let it get to him, and it certainly didn't stop him. In possession, he was ruthlessly effective. After seeing him play at North End, one contemporary sports journalist was moved to write, every facet of the game was mastered by the most perfect player ever to grace an English pitch. He had immense athleticism, was majestic in the air, and possessed clinical finishing power. In 1954, Tom Finney was elected Footballer of the Year, an honour which he was to receive again in 1957. The award recognised Finney's contribution to the game as a great sportsman.
Tommy not only was a wonderful footballer, he was a wonderful man. And no matter when you see him, he'll always be the same. And even when he was playing, he was a gentleman on the field. He never swore. You could kick him all over the place, and he'd never swear. I remember playing against Preston, and it was in February, and it was very hard. It was frozen. And I tried to tackle Tommy, and he went slithering on this frozen surface, right on his face, his chest. And he got up and dusted himself down and says, "Fizz the neck on." You know, he could have sworn or something like that, but no. He just turned around and started up. And that was the man himself. He was never ever begrudged anyone.
Tom was outside Ritter's day, and I had occasions to veer across and bundle him off the pitch onto the ash track, real heavy stuff, you know, real rough tackling. And when I got back to the ground on a Monday morning, Mr. Nat Buck, the chairman, sent for me and gave me a bit of a rollicking for being a bit too rough, and our Tommy, as he called him. And he cut it out and all that carry on, and he offered me some tablets to take to cool me down a little bit, and I told him what to do with these tablets, like. But Tom was great. He never sort of held a grudge, or he looked upon it like it was a game, and you had to do your best to try and stop him.
In 1954, the Footballer of the Year led the North End team out for the cup final against West Bromwich Albion. It should have been a triumph, but sadly, it wasn't Preston's day.
I would think that was, yes, my most disappointing part in my career. I think that going and looking back over the game, it was probably one of the worst games I ever played for Preston North End. I went full of hope and wanted to play the game of my life, and had an absolute stinker, really, and I couldn't give any apparent reason for it. It was just the fact that I went on the field and I felt exhausted, physically exhausted before I went on. I think mentally and physically I was exhausted and didn't consequently play anywhere near as good as I should have done.
For supporters of both sides, what suspense as Allen ran up to take the kick. Thompson touched the ball, but it was a goal. Finney and the gallant men of North End were very sporting losers and returned to Preston laden with honours, though not with the cup.
Tom Finney and Preston North End are inseparable. For 20 years he shared in, and many would say made, North End's greatest triumphs. Finney would be the first to dispute the claim that Preston was a one-man team. But the record shows that after his retirement in 1960, the club slipped from the First Division and has never been back. So far, that is. But for those who saw Finney and North End at their peak, those games have a magic that may never be repeated.
When the wind blew the referee's coin at Deepdale, it was evident that the gale was going to play a big part in what might otherwise have been a vintage cup tie between two classic teams, Preston North End and Tottenham Hotspur.
Tom Finney was a really brilliant player, whether it was on the left or on the right. His ball control, his shooting ability was second to none. And I can recall in the 1950s, when I was playing for Wolverhampton Wanderers and playing here at Deepdale, there were about 30,000 people here, packed to capacity, all wanted to see one person to play. That was Tom Finney.
By the mid-50s, the only threat to Finney's place in the England team was injury. He'd been subjected to some gruelling punishment as time after time the opposition tried to put him out of the match. The hard knocks were beginning to tell.
He was very close to me, and he came down the left-hand side with the ball, and he had this wonderful balance, tremendous balance and terrific acceleration. And he seemed to be going right, and then he seemed to go left, as he did. And I was ready to go with him when I saw him just stop. And he actually sat down, and the ball stopped. And I saw him, and I just kicked the ball out of play, because I knew there was something wrong with him.
As the 1960s approached, Finney continued to display brilliant form, while new stars were beginning to emerge.
Right back, Alex Parker bars the way. A slip and a swerve, and Tommy's passed. A fine centre, and Bobby Charlton slams the ball home.
Tom Finney played just one game in the 1958 World Cup. With 5 minutes to go and England 2-1 down against Russia, he took the equalising penalty, coolly putting the ball past Yashin. This, in spite of suffering a knee injury, which was to put him out of the series.
Only half clear. Hayne shot. It was 2 goals for England.
Finney played his last match for England in 1958. He had played in 76 internationals, scoring 30 goals. The record shows that in all, Finney played 433 league games and scored 187 goals. That's 1 goal every 2.3 games. He also reached double figures for goals scored in 10 out of 14 seasons. This compares well against other footballing greats. Finney's overall scorecard looks like this. In the FA Cup, Finney played in 40 games and scored 23 goals, an average of 1 goal every 1.7 games. In the Football League Representative 11, Finney played in 17 games and scored in 7. That's 1 goal every 2.4 games. And with remarkable consistency, of the 76 games he played for England, he maintained an average of 1 goal every 2.5 games. This gives a grand total of 566 matches, during which winger Finney scored 247 goals in all, which gives a goal average of 1 goal every 2.2 games. Quite staggering. A wonderful tally for a winger, a man who spent so much of the 90 minutes wide on the touchline, creating havoc and making goals for others. Tom Finney finally hung his boots up on the 30th of May 1960. His voice breaking with emotion, Finney delivered his farewell speech to the Deepdale crowd, packed to double capacity. Football supporters came from all over the country, brought to Preston by the knowledge that this would be their last chance to see a legend playing the game he loved. For 2 decades, Finney had stirred emotions here at Deepdale. Somehow the people that gathered that day knew that they would never see his like again.
On the day I didn't feel like playing, I'll tell you that. I went out and it was a very, very emotional occasion, and you know, the players were all in a circle, and the referee and linesman. The band were playing and they sang, and I certainly didn't feel like after it had all finished, I just felt really as though I wanted to go back into the dressing room and sit down and have a good cry. That was, you know, foremost in my mind about what I was going to do, and although I had my business to fall back on, I had a very, very busy time leading up to that, and all sorts of people talking to me and saying that, you know, I shouldn't be finishing when I did decide to finish. But I felt I'd had a very, very good innings and a very happy one in football.
Well, after football, what then? Well, Finney, fortunately, had much to fall back on. Over the years, he'd built up his business. It was part of the Finney legend that he would be out plumbing before a match. And it was true that he never let football dominate this part of his life. Today, Tom Finney Limited, plumbing, heating and electrical contractors, is still going strong, employing a workforce of over 90 people. Never one to resist a challenge, he tackled a well-known breakfast cereal early on. Finney's loyalty to Preston has been reciprocated. He's been made an honorary freeman of the town, chairman of the Preston Health Authority, and received honorary degrees from Lancaster University and Lancashire Polytechnic. National recognition has also followed. In 1961, he received an OBE for his services to football. He's frequently called upon to make presentations.
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me very great pleasure to be asked along here tonight to present this wonderful trophy to Bill on behalf of Ladbrokes. Some of you will know, of course, that I played a wee time with Bill.
I remember many things about Shanks. We were at the football writers' dinner Thursday night before the cup final, and Bill and I was at the bar. I was having my gin and tonic, and Bill was having his mug of tea because he didn't drink at all. Shanks, of course, talking about the greats, Finney included, and Tommy Docherty, people like that. And two members of the press come over, a bloke called Frank McGee, who used to write for the Daily Mirror in the North West here, and the bloke called Nigel Clark, who still writes for the Mirror down south. And Frank McGee says to me, Doc, he says, how does McShannon compare with Finney as a player? And I was quite taken aback, of course, rushing to dive in with a cheeky answer. And Shankley just held me back, and Nigel Clark interrupted and says, oh, I think McShannon compares very favourably with Tommy Finney as a player. And Shanks looked at both of them for about 2 seconds and says, mind you, he says, Finney's 65, he says.
But Preston North End has always been Finney's passion. Now, president of his old club, he rarely misses a game. Preston North End may no longer be the First Division contenders they were in his time, but the loyalty and the memories remain.
What I remember about it was every time Tommy got the ball, you felt as if you could hear a pin drop. And then with every stride that he took, the noise increased. And it just seemed that time after time, he reached the byline, whipped across a ball, or finished up with a shot, and by that time, the volume was tremendous. And that night, I can't ever remember him putting a foot wrong. He looked a perfect footballer.
There'll never be another Finney, ever, in this world, because the man upstairs made him, and he blessed us with a great talent, and I just feel sorry for the people who never saw him play.